Hi everybody, welcome. It's lovely to see everybody here. People are still coming in, so I might just wait another minute and then I'll start with an introduction. Okay, everybody, so we will begin. There might be some people coming in a bit later, but that's fine, we'll start anyway. So my name is Rachel Porter. I am a drama and movement therapist, trainer, lecturer, and an artist and theatre maker. I co-founded with Emily Lawrence and Persephone Pearl Feral Theatre, and it's from our work in feral theatre that Remembrance Day for Lost Species and Lost Species Day has evolved and emerged and is what it is right now. Lost Species Day falls on November the 30th every year. It's a recurring chance each year to explore the stories of extinct and critically endangered species, cultures, and ecological communities. So Bea and I will now give a visual description of ourselves for accessibility. So I am a white woman in my late 40s. I have long brown hair with bits of grey in. I'm wearing a black dress, red lipstick, glasses, and I'm in a dimly lit room. Okay, over to you, Bea.
And I am a young-ish femme-looking person with long dark hair and a long black smock kind of thing in a very brightly lit, or at least white looking room with a candle on one side of me and some dead red roses on the other, with a single feather sticking out.
Thank you. So Bea, I will talk about Bea later. Bea is the person who's going to be leading you through the ritual this year. Just to say that last year, Bea was also a part of the ritual on this day, which coincided with an eclipse in the sign of Gemini. That eclipse cycle will be finishing this coming Saturday, so it's completely in alignment with the cycle of this particular year of 2 Lost Species Days. So that feels significant, something we want to mention, name. When it was last year in Gemini, Bea was a part of a group of ritualists and artists, and it was the whole event was of a very Gemini nature, lots of talking, ideas, bringing together things, crafting. It was more bubbly experience. And this year, in line, and this wasn't intentional, but in line with this Sagittarian eclipse, it has much more a sense of focus. Bea will be working on her own with one ritual. So it's interesting to note and significant that we, have aligned with that. And also that the rituals change over the years. So there are a number of events happening for Remembrance Day for Lost Species 2021, public and private. Some of you may have been at the vigil for the smooth handfish on Sunday, or last night's panel discussion on climate justice, eco-emotions, and the role of art in well-being. Some of you may just have come from Art Earth's online conversation with Climate Psychology Alliance Executive Carol Hickman. You may not have come from any events, and everybody's welcome. This event will be about an hour long or so. In a moment, I'm going to introduce Bea, who will hold the ritual space for 45 minutes. Then after the ritual, there will be a space for about 20 minutes or so for you all to ask questions or share, or just stay with us a bit longer if you feel that's important for you. Sometimes that can be a useful and important part of the process after something like this, which can be moving. So you will be on mute throughout the ritual. If you have any questions about something that's happening in the ritual, and you're not sure about something, you can put your question into the chat, and the RDLS team will answer your questions. Okay, so not to ask Bea directly at that point, then you can ask her questions at the end. Please take care of yourselves. It is a ritual, it can be intense, so do as much as or as little as you feel able to do with the material that Bea offers you. We will be working a lot with image and visualization, and of course different people respond and receive images in different ways. So for some of you, you will see pictures in your mind, others of you will feel it in your bodies. Like a movement. Some of you will experience the images in an emotional way. Some will receive thoughts. Some will feel more comfortable sometimes stepping out and witnessing. Others will want to get right in there. If you feel triggered by an image, you can just pause, step back, and come back in when you want to. So that's really important. I'm going to talk a bit about Bea now. Bea Xu is a Chinese-British multidisciplinary psychic worker, psychotherapist, artist, activist who utilizes mixed media, ritual, and visionary fiction. She's interested in the interplay of archetypal symbols with personal trauma and the potential of using play in collective shadow work. Bea has a background in climate communications and campaigns. So Bea's work, we could say, happens within three fields that move together and apart in different ways, but they're all embedded in a spirituality which has emerged over time. So Bea's To Be ritual is a space where individuals in group can find a safe, non-judgmental space in order to participate in a form of processing and sharing and playing with information. It's an experimental, intuitive, non-linear, counter-cultural in the West space. So we're not looking for a product. Bear all these things in mind when you're working. It's experimental. There's no wrong or right way to experience the material or the ritual. Some of you will not feel anything. Some of you will feel lots. You'll leave with this feeling of catharsis. Others will leave with a feeling of weight. Others will be impacted later. So all of these diverse experiences are part of what Bea calls this, what did you say, this alchemical cauldron was this gorgeous term that Bea used, specifically for ecological grief, this alchemical cauldron where people can bring whatever they want to the ritual. It can be experienced, it can be held, and it can be transformed, but it needs time. So after the event, throughout the event, things might take time, and we don't know what will happen because it's non-linear. Judgment can sometimes get in the way, our own judgments of ourselves or each other. Bea talks about that in its relationship to shame, especially in terms of climate extinction, grief. There can be fear around it, the complexity of being a part of a culture that is responsible for the damage being done, the feelings of, do I have a right to be upset, to be grieving for something that I might be a part of creating the damage in the first place. So in this space, we try, if we can, to suspend judgment, to allow the process, the transformative potential of the ritual to take place. This ritual falls in between two performances that Bea has done and is about to do. And these both center around, well, the focus of which has been the intriguing sophistication of mycelium networks, its extraordinary technology, as well as the awe-inspiring dark divinity, primordial, wild, wise resilience of the mycelium network. And something, a lovely quote from Bea that I took from something she said: I'm trying to dig deep into the dark creases of our environment as it accelerates into something potentially uninhabitable, trying to seek inspiration from that process as a valid way of maintaining psychological resilience as things escalate. That word resilience comes up again, the resilience of the mycelium and the resilience we might need to develop to face our future. So I'd like to leave you with one final quote from Bea, which moved me so deeply before Bea begins. There is still a deep, deep project of oneness that exists on a primitive level inside of ourselves. Why not inspire ourselves from that deep desire to connect through all these shapes and configurations that we can see in nature? And now, Bea, I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Once again, second year in a row of providing such a generous and warm introduction. Welcome everybody to this 2021 10th anniversary edition of the Lost Species Day ritual. And this year we will be focusing on interdependence in all of its shapes, forms, iterations, and subjectivities, however that relates to your personal sense of connection in the world. I'm going to invite all of you at this point to simply arrive in this space if it feels like you haven't already. Make sure you're really kind of sitting or slouching or even kind of meandering around in a way that feels very comfortable in the space that you're in. And maybe for a brief moment, notice and refamiliarize yourself with the four walls of the room that you're in order to, I suppose, ground yourself and also feel a sense of gratitude, perhaps, for what it is that's holding you, for what's about to happen. I'd like to begin by reading out the names and stories of the lost and the damaged life forms and humans that have sacrificed themselves for the sake of preserving what is left on this habitable earth. And perhaps also losing their lives as a result of colonial powers that, of course, are entirely complicit in the accelerating degradation of all life around us. In 2020, the International Union for Conservation of Natures, or the IUCN, reported that more than a quarter of the species it has on its red list are now threatened with extinction. Environmental defenders are more at risk than ever of being murdered since the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement was signed, with at least 30% of recorded attacks linked to resource exploitation across logging, hydroelectric dams, and other infrastructure like mini and large-scale agribuses. Brazilian forest defenders Z. Claudio and Maria Ribeiro da Silva were murdered in May 2011, and this year marked the 10th anniversary of their murder. There are now 247 million fewer tree sparrows than in 1980. Youth activists in Cambodia have been imprisoned for 10 years for protesting the destruction of Ta Mok Lake. Oscar Erauld Adams, a water defender, was murdered in Mexico after opposing the extractive industries contributing to water scarcity in Baja California. "65 defenders were murdered in Colombia this year." One-third of indigenous West Papua population has been murdered since 1960. One million Australian animals died in Australian bushfires last year. Oil palm, timber, and mining concessions are sold on indigenous lands without consultation with the ancestral landowners. Total is building a new East African crude oil pipeline through Uganda and Tanzania as I speak. The smooth handfish was declared extinct in 2020 after not being seen since colonial scientists took a specimen from its home from the waters of Tasmania in 1802. Here are some more extinct species. Bachman's warbler, bridled white-eye bird, flat pigtoe mussel, ivory-billed woodpecker, green blossom pearly mussel, Molokai creeper bird, Chico Mendes was killed by a rancher in Brazil in 1988. He campaigned to protect the Amazon rainforest and to preserve the human rights of the indigenous people. Environmental activist and poet Ken Saro-Wiwa was executed as part of the Ogoni 9 by the Nigerian government in 1995 after years of campaigning against the activities of Shell in the Niger Delta. Berta Caceres was an indigenous Honduran activist and leader who had campaigned against hydroelectric damming in the Guacaque River Basin. She was murdered in 2016. Fikile Nshangase was involved in a legal dispute over the extension of an open-cast mine operated by Tendele Coal in KwaZulu-Natal Province, South Africa. Fikile was shot dead in her living room this year. The splendid poison frog of Panama was declared extinct in 2020. It is one of the most recently extinct animals on the planet. The Spix macaw is a recently extinct animal from near the Rio São Francisco in Bahia, Brazil. The Pyrenean ibex is now extinct. The Jalpa Falsbrook salamander is now extinct. The pig-footed bandicoot is now extinct. The Navassa curly-tailed lizard is now extinct. The Macquarie parakeet is now extinct. The Guam flycatcher is now extinct. The little swan island hutia is now extinct. The quagga is now extinct. The last aurochs, which died in 1627, were from the Yaktorau forest in Poland. And the Barbary lion is now extinct. We're gathered together this evening in order to honor all of those fallen, lost, and obsolete life forms. And at this moment, you may be filled with all sorts of difficult feelings. Or perhaps no feelings at all. Either state of being, feeling, processing is welcome and valid. Because the fact is, what we're all having to process together is something that has been unthinkable for all of human civilization up until this point. I hold this little candle in memoriam to all of those life forms. And I invite you all to take as much time as you need to slowly turn your awareness from all that has come before inward and into the present moment of your being, our being, together, connected and entangled in this room. And I'd like to invite you to begin adopting a soft focus in your eyes, perhaps even closing them all together if that feels most comfortable. Allow yourself to begin to breathe. And within each exhalation of breath, feel whatever has been percolating inside you as a result of that lost but not forgotten list to slowly start diffusing into the room and the space around you. I would like to invite you to conjure up a memory of a recent or poignant exchange that you had with another life form, human or more than human, whatever feels the most important at this moment. As you replay and reconstruct this memory of this encounter that you had, I ask you to consider what it was that you imparted to the other being during this exchange. Perhaps it was a bit of small talk, a glance, a gesture, a secret, or perhaps it was something altogether more involved. I'd like you to recall how that exchange was received by the other life form. Were they noticeably altered by it in some way? Perhaps you can picture it now. Some energetic shift in the way that they operated as a result of your intervention. Notice what comes up in your body as you recount this exchange once again. Feelings, sensations, intuitions, regrets, perhaps a reliving of a blissful exchange. I'm going to ask you to prepare to replay this encounter in your mind, but this time choose to act in a different way. Notice this time round how the other life form reacts on this alternate timeline, you could say. Cast any notion of positive or negative out of your mind. This was just a different way of things playing out. But do notice what comes up in your body this time? Do you feel any differently to before? In another realm of reality, this alternate chain reaction of cause and effect exists in just as concrete a way as the history between you and this other life form has led to where both of you are today. I'm here to honor this alternate narrative thread in this space today, and I invite all of you to do the same. I'm going to briefly share my personal exchange with all of you. The life form is actually right here. It was a little petri dish, a little agar dish of slime mold, which I had been cultivating as a pet for not very long before I made a decision to engage with it in a studio setting with a set of tweezers and some photosensitive paper. I didn't consider the sentience of this life form at the time that I chose to interact with it in that way, save for its own kind of decorative purposes for my art practice. I figured it would be resilient enough to weather a little bit of poking and a little bit of exposure to contact imprinting. But I was heartbroken to discover pretty much that evening when I took the petri dish home that the slime mold was on the way to dying out completely as a result of my intervention. If I hadn't brought it to the studio that day, it would still be alive. Maybe I wouldn't have had an interesting set of contact prints as a result, but it was a decision that I made. So I am responsible for taking its life. As responsible as I was for, I suppose, reanimating it. I believe some of you may have a piece of paper to hand, if it helps, and there was anything particularly poignant about that parallel universe exercise we just did, I'd invite you to just jot down the most salient or moving images or feelings or sensations that came up for you. You can save them for later. I'm going to invite you all back into this slow, calm, and inward looking space that we arrived at earlier. And leading on from the last exercise, I'd really like you to picture the humans in your current network, in your life, that you trust the most. I'm going to invite you to picture these humans standing around you in a circle of support, love, and care. There's no rush with this one. And as you're standing in this circle of those that you trust the most, allow yourself to enjoy how it feels to be supported by these people. Perhaps you can study their facial expressions, their body postures, maybe even some telltale characteristics about each of them that makes them undeniably themselves. Soak in this support, because they're there for you, and you have brought them into your life for a reason. Now, picture behind this initial circle another ring of human beings. These are more distant friends and comrades who you nonetheless have a meaningful relationship with of some sort. Just notice the way that this new addition of people is beginning to grow this little web of life forms that care. Now, picture, standing behind them, the humans that you would regard as friendly acquaintances. Maybe they're part of your wider community. Maybe they're neighbors or collaborators with which you have shared moments of sincerity and creative inspiration. Perhaps you would also like to add members of the international community that you feel in solidarity with. Perhaps those that you haven't met in person necessarily, but really feel a sense of common struggle with. And just notice how your concentric circle of care is growing. Now, I invite you to add a circle of non-human or more than human life. Animals or plants or fungi or maybe even microbes in your immediate everyday environment who you have cultivated some sort of resonance with over time. Notice the new shapes and colors these additions to your circle of care have added to the overall picture. Finally, in the outer ring, add a circle of seemingly inanimate objects that support you in some meaningful way in your day-to-day living. Perhaps you have a diary that you journal in regularly, a sentimental piece of jewelry, a lucky item of clothing, or certain objects that stand on your altar. Take in the difference these new additions to your circle bring to all those life forms that came before them in the inner rings. Admire the plurality of all of these different entities that are connected to you. This is your concentric circle of care. And so far, these life forms are orbiting you on one plane of dimension. But here's the twist. Imagine, if you can, and this will be abstract, I appreciate, every single entity in all of these rings that you have conjured up around you, also having their own rings and wider rings of people, non-human life forms, and even things orbiting them, also in a formation of support and care. I wonder what image you're left with. Perhaps it's some wild matrix of activity and life, complex and difficult to take stock of all in one go. That's okay, because that is entanglement. And we're not necessarily supposed, as mere mortal human beings, to be able to fully apprehend all of this teeming life as it orbits around each other in such a dense and frenetic way. But stay with this image if you can. And imagine a slowly building, slowly glowing orb of light emanating from within you. As it grows and grows and grows, from the solar plexus, or let's say the kind of diaphragm area of your body, the very core of you. You can visualize it, maybe you can even feel it spreading into lots of thin individual threads, strands of light. And it's connecting to each member of your concentric circle of care and love and support. It's connecting you to each of them. Imagine the light then spreading from each of them and connecting out to the members of their own concentric circles of orbiting care. Is it even possible to visualize the complexity of light that emerges from this matrix of connection and entanglement? If not, that's okay. Perhaps you can feel its intensity instead. Perhaps there is a warmth to it, or maybe even a pulsating vibration of energy. I'd like you to hold that stance for a split second more, shall we say. For this is the fire web of spirit connection that we each hold with other life forms, human or more than human. And I appreciate it can be an overwhelming thing to behold and radiant in its intensity. Stay with it for as long as feels comfortable. And now I'm going to invite you to allow the glow of these webs to slowly die down like the remaining embers of a bonfire. And as they fade, so do the faces, bodies, and outlines of the entities that have populated your circles of care fade away to darkness. But something remains, like a faint and delicate spider web of connection between you and the outside world. You can still feel the life, subtle as it is, still traveling back and forth along these strands from your mind. Like Wi-Fi, it's invisible now, but there are packets of data constantly being emitted along them. What we're engaging with at this moment is the air web of ideas, language, and informational transaction that connects us to all living life forms, and perhaps even those colder planetary bodies in the stratosphere above us. Shout out to the incoming eclipse. This includes orbiting bodies like satellites, even machine intelligence, and things that exist only as concepts. Because life, it really does have a way of carrying on. Now, you touch one of these delicate threads of spider silk and feel it between your fingers. It dissolves to the touch, and suddenly you're just feeling the touch of your own skin on skin between your thumb and your index finger. I invite you to feel the firmness of your digits as they press against each other. Remember, this is due to the internal water pressure of your own body. So as you feel this firmness, this pushback from your own bodily integrity, I invite you to sense the blood within your fingers at this moment. You might need to really slow down to be able to take note of this. If you can, try to sense the pulsing of that tap, tap, beat, beat of your blood as it spreads up through your fingers to your hands, wrists, arms, shoulders. And you might want to give these parts of your body a bit of a flex just to remind yourself of how fluid your body can be. Check in with your body. Have fun with it as you sense your blood journeying to your heart. Your circulation is your body's own hydraulic system of water pressure, and your blood is carrying a universe of chemical compounds, hormones, microbes, nutrients, and of course, good old H2O itself. What would it feel like to be a tiny life form journeying through the landscape of your body? I invite you to really burrow down into that question. Embody it even. And notice any emotions that come up around this microcosmic perspective. Perhaps not all of them are pleasant, especially given the times that we're living in. In any case, this here is the water web of inner experience, sustained as it is by that flow of energy beneath the skin, pumped around by the heart, the center of the soul, and where the mind and spirit can meet the body. I want to give a moment to honor all of our hearts, which has perhaps or surely brought us all into this space today. But the blood continues, of course. Now, the flow of blood is journeying down to your feet. And whether you're sitting, standing, lying down, or jumping around, sense the energy of that blood seeping gradually downwards into the ground that supports you and branching out into that structure, digging down as roots or tendrils of mycelium, which is the bigger root-like body of all mushroom life forms. I'm going to make direct contact between the floor and my bare feet. And I invite any of you to do the same if you feel called to. As and skin makes contact with that supporting, grounding structure, I invite you to feel the anchoring effect that this creates on your body. But the tendrils, they don't stop spreading. No, they grow and they grow until they enter the earth beneath the building you're residing in right now, deep into the planet's tectonic core and out across continents, bypassing borders and nation states and all sorts of arbitrary divisions between one land mass and another. Just keeps growing, keeps expanding, keeps becoming more and more of a formidable life form in and of itself. This is the earth web of the planetary body. It nourishes and it holds us. And I call in, on behalf of all of us this evening, a trust that it can hold our weight. And I really invite you all to feel yourselves letting go of any excess energy that the journey we've taken this evening through the previous elements may or may not have brought up in you. I hope that you can trust that the earth and its mycelium network of webs and teeming life is strong enough to hold it for you. What other emotions might have been brought up by the journey that we have been on? Whatever it is, cast it into the earth. And if it feels right, you can even let your body shake it out or stamp or jump on the ground to really release it into that great below. Mycelium is the underground network of fungi that is vast, the biggest living organism on planet Earth, as I believe. It is also one of the oldest. It's primordial. Saw the coming and going of so many civilizations and non-human species more ancient than our own. It witnessed the birth and the decline of the dinosaurs, for example. It possesses a wisdom that is deep and dark and so old. Mycelium is a living testament to resilience on this planet. It channels information from one portion of land to another through its complex and delicate webbing of tendrils and sensors. What secrets does it hold about the key to sustainable and communal living? What minerals does its rich, fertile fingers enclose down there? Perhaps you already know, after all. Your mycelium is down there right now. It's a bountiful residue. There is a bountiful residue of the species in their multitudes that we have lost over millennia, that have been alchemized into new forms of energy and nourishment in the dirt. And the mycelium, that old and ancient friend of ours, has a direct way of knowing and contacting and communing with our ancestors, with the dearly departed, and those that died for a much greater cause. And so this ritual space is now becoming a cauldron of all the images, memories, thoughts, and feelings that the webs of the world have woven for each of us. There is no more to conjure up or to judge. As we circle back to where we began at the start of this evening, the invitation is to breathe into this dark, dense space we hold collectively between us, and to grieve into it if we must. To surrender. We are fast approaching the final second of the scheduled formal ritualistic circle. But because the nature of the circle this evening has been somewhat one-sided, shall we say, in terms of the ability to express into this space, and because it's, of course, incredibly important to be able to give all of you an opportunity to be able to share, decompress, and be in greater community with each other, if that's what you would like to do. I believe we will now slightly transform the nature of the space into something a little more freeform. And I myself will stay in the space for a little longer, and I'm going to hand some of the kind of facilitation. I don't know if Rachel, if you wanted to say anything, that's fine. If not, I'm happy to continue.
Am I unmuted now? Sorry. Great. Yeah, I feel like we're in this interesting in-between space now, and thank you so much, Bea. That was so incredible. And I've seen some I don't feel lonely anymore. I just saw in the chat. So there are some lovely comments in the chat. So thank you for that. So you can put comments in the chat, but just to open it out, would anybody like to share anything or ask anything in this space? It could be a lovely moment to share, to hear each other's voices, or I could read things out. Let me see, what have we got? I don't feel lonely anymore. Thank you, lovely. Reconnecting. Grateful to come here and be held so well in an opened out space for an hour. Anybody want to share? Carol, is that you? Would you like
Yes.
to? Yes, Carol, would you like to say something?
The depth of a ritual, this particular ritual reaches deep into cosmology. This is so deep in terms of connecting science and spirit. It's not easily found. And yet, this is the way forward. This is the evolutionary consciousness that will be transformative. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And thank you everyone who's left so many wonderful comments already. It's really moving.
I can see some people have their microphones off, so you feel free to talk. Henry, would you like to say something?
I'm a bit just a bit overwhelmed by the breadth and depth of the words that Bea has just shared with us, and I spent a lot of my life being very trying to get over my hatred of beings for what they've been doing, even as a child, and I think that this is kind of very healing for me to sit with a body of people like you and to find something that just rebalances me.
Yeah.
I can't really say much else.
Thank you so much for joining us, Henry.
Thank you for your amazing words.
You're welcome.
And image conjuring.
Yeah, I just want to say, can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, we could. Okay, yeah, you're back.
I just want to say I'm just so truly aware when you started with all the people, the plants and beings that we've extincted, that we killed. And we were contributing to this knowingly or unconsciously. And I therefore wonder, if we do that externally, we must be doing that internally. There is just no way that we cannot do this. And I just feel this is a time of this great change, this great transition. And what you did, Bea, I just feel is so relevant, so acute to what we're going through, and the process of our, what I would say, turmoil, the inner fire, the hurricanes, the destruction, I think is part of the process of what we must awaken us, the debris we must lose. And I almost feel, and it maybe sounds kitschy, kitschy in the way it sounds like sentimental, but like birth a new world in us as well as externally. I can't quite explain it, but that's what I got out of it. Yeah.
Not kitschy at all. It's epic, right? It's life or death at this point. So, yeah, these are the stakes.
We live in a world divided from itself, and this work is plugging back in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And split within as well to link that last comment to the previous one. That's definitely what I believe.
For me, it's a degree also about the decolonization work. The idea of sort of getting rid of the I within the whole story about it's my responsibility. I'm the hypocrite. I'm the polluter. I'm the solution. Everything. And it's like, hang on, we're all just the planet experiencing itself, the universe in its process. Yeah, maybe they'll flow and maybe it won't. And, we're all going to die anyway. So live it, bless up, let it flow. Whatever's righteous, isn't it? Because that's what we're made of. What the ancestors made us, they made through the previous mass extinctions. They just the ones with enough to force through, and it's like that's what life does. It eats up everything until then it plagues and collapses, and that's happening. So it's just life. Thank you for plugging us in, because it's so easy to get caught up a million miles away from that web, that mycelial web. I love that news, as everyone's seen, about the protection network for the mycelial networks under the ground, holding all the nourishment around the universe, the planet. It's beautiful stuff. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Zoe.
I'm just scanning the screen for microphones coming off. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to say out loud? Or any movements they want to do? Yeah. Thank you, Zoe. I'm going to, oh, sorry, did someone, I was going to read some messages. Did someone want to say something? Yes, Carol.
I want to thank the whole network. I want to thank the founders. I hadn't heard of this day until this week, and I am with someone else in my network here to learn about this day and to take this forward to a ritual that we will be offering to our networks then this evening here in Ontario in Canada. So thank you just immeasurably. Evolutionary rituals are absolutely essentials for the transformation of our cultures.
Yeah.
What's the name of your network, Carol?
Yeah.
Well, the networks include programs in Earth Literacies, which comes out of Victoria, BC, and my own networks of evolutionary ritual community at Carol Kilby author at carolkilby.com. And thank you.
And just to say that we have some of the events that took place were recorded, incredible talks with incredible people talking about many of the themes and the subjects that have come up, including mycelium. Mycelium was spoken about last night. So, you know, I guess if you keep an eye out in our social media, you know, channels, at some point those will come and you can, is that right? Am I right there? People will be able to access those talks. Yeah. I really, if you didn't see them, I really recommend. And also check out Bea's work in all the other places that she's working and her website. Let me see. Yeah, last night's conversation was incredible. Okay. Hang on. Circles within circles. Yes, each thing a centration of radiance, creativity, all infinite potential. That was Carol. I'm going in the wrong direction, so they're being read in the wrong order. I realize it's a bit abstract. Just lots of lovely things. It feels like my hand was held in this place where it feels so hard to be present. My feelings about what is happening to life, it really felt, it felt really important to be here to share this, even digitally. Deeply beautiful, Bea. It means so much, but it's hard to find words. With so much love. I'm in your outer circle now. That was from you.
Yeah, I responded to Judith privately to that one.
We all are. We're all in each other's outer circle.
Exactly.
Thank you, a taste of deep interconnection of all beings, whether living or past, life-giving in the face of constant loss. Lots of thank yous. It was beautiful, moving, profound. I feel safe and peaceful in a beautiful space. It's a beautiful experience for us. Thank you to everybody for being here, for sharing. The work, I think, is something like this. It's amplified. Of course, it lives, and I believe it has an impact. If it's just two of us here, it would have meant something and had an impact on the world, on us all. But with more, it does feel to me like it amplifies something even more. And these circles, all of our circles, we go out and we take something of this with us. Does anybody else want to share anything?
I would, but I'm shy.
Do it anyway.
Is that go for it, Henry?
I started reading a book this evening about the gut biome, and how there are more species of different animals living inside us than there are living in the Brazilian rainforest.
Oh, wow.
So microbes and stuff, and that really kind of sort of changes. I mean, obviously I've read that before, but it was just kind of interesting that we were coming up to this event, and I had to stop thinking about cuddly things and thinking about how important all the things are inside us, they're inside us. And somebody else picked up on that, was it Akila talking about when we destroy the outside, we're ultimately going to be destroying the inside. And so all this abuse that we give our bodies these days, it's all sort of reflected in what happens in our gut biome. And so I'm just rambling. I don't have a point to make except that all those creatures are, massively important.
I was going to say something. Thank you, Bea, firstly. I know I've said that in the chat already, but that really was incredible and very moving. And I was just going to say that it feels really especially important as a kind of practice. And I feel like I want to do this on a regular basis. I mean, I'll just have your voice in my head, but it feels important because what I feel a lot of the time is polarization and fragmentation. Like, I feel like that is the kind of energy that's around a lot. If, like me, you sort of listen to the news a lot and kind of engage in kind of political discourse, for want of a better way of putting it. So it feels like you end up feeling like, what's my positionality on this and on that, and you feel very fragmented and you want to know where you stand, but you don't, because everything's shifting all the time, and it's very like it's panicky and it's unsure. And I've been having a lot of those sorts of feelings and a lot of conversations with other people about having those feelings too. So this is like such an antidote to that. It's like the opposite of that. It's like deep and connected and rooted, and it was just like all of that. I feel cleansed of all of that fragmentation and sort of disassociation. So yeah, I feel like this is a really important practice for our times, to kind of just to I don't know, connect in with the real stuff. So thank you.
You're so welcome, Emily. And I think that's such a good point about the very polarizing times that we're living in. I believe, like last year, the ritual that I did with the group for Lost Species Day was directly trying to address that polarization that I was already despairing about. And I'm glad that you're actually, well, not glad, but like we're way more fragmented now than we were a year ago, I feel, but I'm glad that the work is still able to address that in a way that feels significant. And I have I don't know, I haven't thought about this properly before it's just occurred to me. But there's something I'm curious about. Like, I wonder if even in the kind of dissonance and the sense of opposition or revulsion that we might feel towards certain people that we can't see eye to eye on in an like epistemological way. So someone that just like fundamentally disagrees with you now about like the fabric of reality, and there's a lot of people like that these days on either side, whichever plot in the map you feel like you belong to at this point in time. I'm still really keen in my own personal practice and in more general sense as well to like tease deeper and figure out actually, no, what is the nubbin of commonality I still have with this person? Because there's something about maybe the extent or the extremity to which we've been completely polarized that is actually unifying. It is in its intensity. So maybe there's like a seed of something that is common to us, but because of differences in upbringing or sense of trust in certain institutions in the world and this, that, and the other, we've ended up going in very divergent ways. But that doesn't mean that we're not, the majority of the case, actually still pretty aligned. And that's just my thought.
Ruthie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you. I'm so grateful for the experience, and I've had numerous responses as I've listened and kind of processed. I suppose just to share my own reason for joining, I'm writing about our connection with nature. It's quite a big part of my work and my spiritual beliefs. And the first response I wanted to share was how eco grief is a kind of a new or relatively new phenomena. I had felt I had done my processing of eco grief just after the reports, the first major UN reports. There have been multiple, but that was the one that really shook the world. And I think what I'm really, through coming here this evening, really kind of acknowledging is that grief, like any kind of form of bereavement, it comes in waves, and just that image of the circle. And it's important to acknowledge that. And I think that art, you've really kind of made me appreciate just how sacred the role of art can be in holding that space for humanity in the absence of having, with patriarchy, what it's done, we've lost a lot of those, and colonial oppression, we've lost a lot of those sacred spaces where we can actually really ritualize grief for the more than human world. So really want, in a very deep way, just wanted to say thank you for that. It was just wonderful from one artist to another. Yeah, really, really lovely. And also it may be pertinent to mention I'm actually commissioned to write a text celebrating the role of art in communities, and it's commissioned by the National Centre for Writing. They've asked me to talk to people that I engage with just on a day-to-day basis, and so I've made notes, and I will send you any kind of outcomes from that if some of the notes feed in. Well, they will feed into the final text, but I'd love to kind of dialogue with you about that for next year, as well. But thank you.
Ruthie, definitely put your details in the chat, not just for me or Lost Species Day, but for all of the other participants.
Sure, yeah, I'll do that now. Thank you.
We should be able to see your work as well, given the.
Oh yeah, I can put that. I can put that down. And just another thought was just that sense of circle, the circle being sacred, and there's something very powerful about what the experiences shared this evening about what happens when we come together in a circle, and how healing that can be even in current times. Just to acknowledge that as well. So thank you. Okay. That's enough for me.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I'm just curious, when you talk about the UN pronouncements, is that the ones from this summer or previous ones?
Sorry, my video is being funny. So the 2018 reports that shook the world, and then there was the wave of Extinction Rebellion activism in the wake of that. So at that particular time, I channeled most of my eco grief into my writing. That became my artistic practice. That became my form of activism. But there's something quite profound about having, there's a need, I think, for spaces like this. My husband, just a couple of weeks ago, he does a lot of work in biodiversity and rewilding, and he mentioned about maybe trying to set up some sort of like eco grief day to raise awareness. It might be something you could look at, because I think what you're doing is really important to help people acknowledge these feelings that we just so rarely get the chance to. So yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
I'll just put my website on. Sure, it's only going to become more prevalent as we accelerate towards the end. Yeah,
exactly. And there's something very restorative as well about that threshold. When you do experience loss, that's when you can really appreciate life. There's a real there is hope there, I think. We're having spaces like this, so gotta keep rambling.
No, on the topic of eco grief, I remember going to a couple of like seminars within the kind of eco psychotherapy realm, even maybe about like 3 years ago, and there were a lot of these kind of practitioners were saying that often clients will come to therapy and they'll be dealing with a life issue, and actually what's underneath it is extinction anxiety, but there isn't enough of an understanding, a widespread understanding amongst those in the therapeutic professions to like just how universal that is. And as a trainee myself, I think I'm on the verge of making contact with extinction anxiety in one of my clients at the moment. And it's interesting to see how that's going to become probably just like a completely prevalent thing in a few years' time.
Yeah, I think there's definitely space for it, for there to be more awareness, and there's a need for, methodology processes. But I think art, in particular, is quite powerful. So thank you. Thank you. There we go. Just got my details there.
One of the talks the other day was talking about how art also is vital because it makes it more accessible, all the things we're talking about, because sometimes it can become rather academic, some of the issues that we're discussing and the complexity of it. So art forms, artists working with these themes and these experiences just means that more and more people can have access to spaces like this and to this need for processing. I'm going to read it. I'm aware that we're coming toward 3 minutes before 8 o'clock. 17 of you are still here. We've got 11 things in the chat, so I'm just going to read those out. Oh dear, where am I? Such fullness and readjusting to who and what we are. Thank you from Claire Quinn very much. A few people are saying bye, I've got to go. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being together with you and the rest of the world. Let's see, is there anything else? Oh God, okay, 16 down, Goddess. Thank you so much for this space. Hi all, I'm Ruthie Collins. Okay, yeah, great. Environmental arts therapy promote groups that support people within eco grief. Fantastic. Aquila's going, all goodness and deep connection to us all. Thank you, Bea. Farewell. And I'm not sure. I think that's it. I think I've. Oh, grief is generative. We are just the latest dancers across the skin of the earth. Thank you, Bea, for such an important, inspiring ceremony, something to keep close every day. So we should probably say goodbye to each other.
May I say something, Rachel? I'm so sorry.
Katie, yes, please.
I wasn't going to, and then Ruthie and Bea's comments just recently, that part of the conversation just turned to sort of inspire me. I was more involved in the ritual last year, and actually what I wanted to share was this time last year, I just learned that my husband had terminal cancer. He died in June. And the thing that I've really learned about grief's always been a pillar in my work to do with extinction, as some of you might know, but the depth of grief is equal to the depth of love, and it lasts as long as love lasts. And that's just what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Katie, for sharing that. So moving. So important, especially from you. You're in it right now. Yeah. Even these moments of, quiet and listening are quite precious. But that is a really beautiful place for us to say goodbye to each other. I think that the grief is as deep as the love. And hearing that come from Katie, I can feel that in my body so deeply. So that just feels like such a special and important place and thing to take forward with us, all of us. And let's stay in touch. Anybody who feels that there's still things they need to share or connections they want to hold on to here, let's keep communicating. If anybody wants to communicate with Bea, I mean, are all of our contact details? Where can people get all of our contact details? If anybody wants, I'm just aware that we're leaving, and there's a weird thing after something like this because we're all online and just bam straight into our personal space again. So, if anybody feels like they need to communicate or comment after the event, sometimes things come later. Please.
Maddie's just put it in the chat.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're on social media, and the website's there and there's an email on that.
Great. So that, and if you want to contact any of us as individuals or want to find contact with someone else, we'll find a way. The mycelium network that is us, is in us. We will find a way, and we are connected. Mycelium, we can't see it, but it's still there. Okay, thank you, Bea. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Nice one.
Thank you.